Today on HooptieDoodle, we break out the frame jig for our Grom build, we do some manly stuff,
just took an engine out of a motorcycle,
and we do the dance of joy.
Alright, so I've gone ahead, I have taken off the rear sets on both sides. That involved taking this axle out of there, as well as the rear brake, the rear wheel and everything to get the brakes off. Got all that stuff off there, got the chain off of there. And now what I want to do is put the front end back on temporarily and sort of set my ride height for the new bike, which is going to be lower than this. It's going to involve taking this shock out and putting in a sort of pseudo fake shock, which is just going to be a piece of some steel tubing, stick that in there, where that'll actually set me where I want to be. And then we'll go ahead and take the rest of this stuff off and get this set up in the frame jig. So I'm gonna go ahead and take the shock off. Pretty easy to get to at this point. We got a bolt there and a bolt up here. Low rider ground right there. All right, so with the wheel all the way down on the subframe, we get a different profile for the Honda Grom here. It's starting to look a little bit more like a chopper. Look at the rake on the front of that thing now, right? It looks a lot longer now. We want to raise the rear up higher than that. So let's play around with that a little bit. I'm gonna get out some wood blocks or something. All right, so it's a few inches higher back here now, and let's see. Oh yeah. Yeah, like that. That might be where it's at. Something like there. That's significantly lower than the stock. I've got some decent clearance still underneath here. I could still run the exhaust down underneath at this clearance if I wanted to, especially with a hardtail. That's not going to be moving at all, this section down in there. Plenty of clearance on there. Oh, I could also run the exhaust off the side. I think we're good. Right about there, probably where we want it. All right, so there is my little stand-in to help lower this thing and set it in place. So let's jam this in here. And there we are. That would be our new height, our new profile. The front end, I'm gonna do something else with the rake on that, because even though that is quite chopper-like, I'm going for not so much of a rake. The rear end, that's what we want right there. This may actually come down slightly and then go, there might be a bar that runs all the way underneath. All right, so with that in, now we can get a more realistic vantage point view of how it should look. So it should be sitting somewhere like here over the rear wheel, maybe up a little bit further, but lower down, and then boom, handlebars straight out, then leg like that, with some forward controls on this thing. All right, I think it's time to take the engine out now. So that's basically, we've got 3 bolts, the one there, the one that's already out over here, then we got one down there as well. So I'll go ahead and take that out. We'll rotate this thing down so it just sits on the ground, and we'll take that bolt out, and then the whole thing should just slide right out. It's out! It's out! Oh yes, we're so manly around here. We just took an engine out of a motorcycle. It's a big step in the build process, man. Big step for this mini motorcycle. This is neat, man. A little tiny engine. I kind of like it. And to think people have taken this engine and driven across country with this thing. It's pretty cool. Trying to set this thing up on the frame jig here. I'm gonna take the rear wheel off. Trying to make sure this thing is square. So I've got like this 3/8 inch rod here, and I've got a scrap piece here. I'm using this to help level this out to my square here. That should be nice and solid. Now I want to go ahead and get this guy onto this thing here and get it set up where it is now. We're going to change the rake on this on a new frame, but I want to get the positioning, the sort of wheelbase set at least. So I want the wheelbase to be similar to the stock one. Let's get this guy on here. Alright, there's that. Here in the rear we gotta get set now. Alright, so I just cut some spacers here so we can get this rear end mounted up on the frame jig. Alright, now we've got everything on here real nice and solid. Now we can go ahead and make our engine mount. I've got some more 2-inch square tubing here and have that come up. And that'll be my engine mount, like right in here actually. Because we got an engine mount bolt right there, and right there. Alright, so here's my piece of 2x2. Stick that in here. I've also got a 2x3 here that is a scrap piece. I picked up a drop. This guy, see if we can jam this in here. Kind of get this position, figure out what we're doing. Looks like I need to take this bracket out of there. I got this little bracket right here hanging down. I'm gonna go ahead and cut that off. It's just tack welded. So I want that over like that. We've got one engine mount right here. And so I'm gonna put basically I'm gonna have a tube. I've got some 1/2-inch tubing that I'm gonna weld to the side of this here. And then hopefully that will line up right with this mounting point right there. And then off of this guy, I think we're gonna have this guy, cut a chunk off of that so it goes right about in there. And on the side of this guy, some tubes mounted that'll line up with engine mount right there and that engine mount right there. So my next plan is to cut the tubing out for these guys. And to do that, I'm actually gonna use the engine itself. You can see here's an engine bolt right here going through, and I'm just gonna measure this section right in here, and we'll cut out a tube to the same length. That will be our template for the actual engine itself. So this guy is 3.5. This guy is also 3.5. All right, so I've got my stock engine mount bolt right here. Go ahead and thread this guy through. I'm gonna take this guy and stick it in here where the engine normally would be. I'm gonna thread the bolt through that tube. Put the nut on the other end. Secure this guy in there. And kind of see what I'm looking at right here. So basically this is the idea. We've got our tube there. We've got our upright right here. I'm gonna weld those two together. And I'm gonna do the same on the other side. All right, I'm gonna do the same thing with the other engine mounts here. Get these things bolted up. All right, so I've removed this guy from the frame jig, and these bolts were not easy to get out because they get stuck in the tube here. There's lots of friction inside here. I believe from the weld, there's some weld material on the inside of the tube, so I'm gonna run a drill bit through here and help clean that thing out, and hopefully this bolt will slide through there nice and smooth once again. Alright, now I'm going to go ahead and weld this extra plate on here, just as a spacer, really. All right, so now that we've got our little engine placeholder finished, we now need to secure it onto the bottom right in here. All right, so I've made up some new plates here for the jig, and I've got some longer bolts. So I'm gonna go ahead and put this thing together, clamp this guy in place, and then we'll have everything clamped down, and then we can take this frame off. Although I think I wanna play with the rake first. Take a look at that. Well, that's it for our Grom today. Next time we're gonna take a look at rake. I'm gonna look at the rake on this thing. First, I'm gonna figure out what rake is. I'll let you know what I figure out, and then we're gonna determine how much rake we want on this bike. Then we're gonna figure out if that's feasible with the engine placement and all that stuff, and we're gonna go from there. So, something to look forward to. So see you next time. Thanks for watching, and keep on wrenching, everybody.